This is iRacing.
This is Jim Beaver, voice of the Lucas Oil Off-Road Racing Series, introducing Pro 2 and Pro 4 trucks on iRacing. Game on!
Once again, photo finish here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Will it be Tim Hogan? It's going to be Christopher DeMerit at the line.
Here we go again for another night of slicing and dicing pinpoint racing and plenty of thrilling action throughout the grid as we welcome you to Watkins Glen International, located in the United States of America, just within a 4 hours drive of New York City. Funnily enough, it's a few minutes quicker to drive to Toronto, Canada than it is to the Big Apple itself. and it hosts the 11th round for Season 2 2019 of the iRacing Formula 3 Championship for Friday night primetime. All coverage today is on RaceSpot TV, streaming live on the iRacing Esports Network around the 5.47 kilometers, 3.4 mile layout of Watkins, Glen. We're using the boot layout here today, the full boot layout. It's a clockwise circuit in nature with 11 turns out there on the racetrack, 4 of those to the left, the other 7 round to the right. And we'll challenge the drivers today for 20 blistering laps of racing around Watkins Glen. No pit stop required here today. Around 1.3 liters of fuel required for every single lap around here. Elevation change 43 meters as the track rises towards the highest point of the circuit at the inner loop and then drops rapidly towards the lowest point during the first right-hander of the loop. Jonathan Simon on hand in the commentary booth alongside Randolph Cheneth for today's race. Randy, we'll take a look at the grid in just a second's time, but it looks like some blistering times by the likes of Ralph Benitez and Christophe Herbinot head the front row for the moment.
Indeed it was. Very quick qualifying from these guys indeed, and I think we're going to be in for a pretty stellar 20 laps to kick off our Memorial Day weekend, the biggest weekend in all of racing.
Yep, certainly so. So let's take a look at your grid for today's event. Ralph Benitez with a very quick 36.5 there, and Christophe Herbinot joins him. The only 2 drivers in the 36s. Herbinot is currently leading the championship ahead of Paul Ilbrink, so today's event could prove pivotal to his championship chances. Henry Rabeau and Julio Almeida head the second row, followed by Bruno Berg, a very quick Div 2 driver who's trying to up his I rating in the next few races. Guilherme Deflandre is in the 6th position. Rest of the grid is on screen, includes the likes of Peter Zonka, who rounds out the top 10. Loic Barbet is an insanely quick Frenchman. He starts from 11th in today's event. David Endelot right behind him on the 6th row. As we cycle through the field, only 2 drivers towards the back end of the order, including Charlie Summers and Jota Perez, have not set times. So, Randy, it is a medium speed corner heading up to turn 1, and then it's going to be Slipstream City heading all the way full throttle for the next 20 seconds up towards the inner loop. It's going to be a hectic opening lap.
That's the big talking point around this place, isn't it? You want a lot of downforce for the likes of the boot and all those parts of the racetrack once you get basically after the butt stop. But everything before that, the run down the front straightaway and the run out of turn 1 is just Slipstream City. And it's going to be a big ask trying to get the setup proper and working correctly here as the field is just about finished up. I'm expecting big drama in towards turn 1 and in towards the bus stop on lap 1.
Exactly. Your best overtaking spots have to be into that inner loop. Turn 1's also a possibility, and possibly entering the boot as well, the lowest point of the circuit at turn 9 after the chute. Lights ready to illuminate. Drivers ready to scream towards the first corner. We go green for 20 laps of racing. What a blistering getaway here from Henry Rabeau. It almost looked like he jumped the start initially. Trying heads into turn 1 here and making a move on Ralph Benitez. No way through for Henry Rabeau. He cycles himself down the order. Julio Almeida having a look here for P3, of course, heading up the hill. But look at your lead battle between Benitez and Herbinot. Herbinot with an insane run using the draft, and he's going to have a search for the first position around the outside.
Not going to be able to, I think, do it just yet, but in towards the bus stop, you can run 2 lanes, and if you hook it up right, you can make the outside work. Not going to work, though, for Herbinot, and Benitez will take that race lead, and who's that off a little bit wide through the grass? The 11 car of Henry Rabeau. He sort of runs the Brad Keselowski line through that bus stop chicane, not able to make it work, as we now work down in towards the boot for the first time.
Yep, 2x2 with Bruno Berg and Almeida, and Berg makes that inside line work as that Rabeau off the racetrack. 3-car collision here on the opening lap as Rabeau loses it on the grass, and he is out of the event. Henry Rabeau with a dramatic topsy-turvy roller coaster first lap. Oh, Randy, what can we say?
F in the chat for him, as I think all there really is to say is that's a big lap 1 incident there for Henry Rabeau, and he's not going to be happy about that as we watch it again. And we're going to see as he comes out of this corner, just pushes a little wide, gets on the grass, and just spins it basically in front of the field. 2 unlucky drivers there also get caught up in that incident. I think maybe even 3 or 4, but Unfortunate there, early race incident, but still the likes of Benitez and Herbino out to a huge lead. That's basically a freebie for them.
Yep, at the end of the first lap, it's Ralph Benitez leading by 1 second from Christoph Herbino, enough to pretty much break the toe here from Christoph. And the championship leader has his work cut out for him to try and reel in the ever-quick Ralph Benitez up ahead. Now, we know, Randy, these tires on the opening lap are extremely cold, and it takes about 4 laps for them to get up to full pressure here around Watkins Glen. So we'll still see these drivers struggle for lap times at least for the next 3 laps.
You have to wonder if maybe that played into Henry Robert's incident just a little bit. Tires a little cold, and Herbino into the bus stop pushes wide, so that's going to give Benitez a humongous lead here. And now Guillaume Defondre in the 3rd spot. Great start from him, started 6th in just the opening couple laps. Already up to 3rd, and he's already hounding down Christoph, because that gap has come well and truly down after that mistake from the 2nd place runner. 0.6 of a second between 2nd and 3rd.
Yep, Kevin van der Slik also in the 4th position, started from 7th and is climbing his way up the order. Other drivers, some movers and shakers throughout the field. Charlie Summers, who started in 22nd toward the back of the order, is up in the 12th. So a great getaway from Charlie Summers here, your number 1 driver today, with the highest rated driver coming into this race. But Kevin van der Slik there from 7th to 4th. Good jump from him. How about Sebastian Chevalier, who started from 16th up into your top 10 at the moment so far. But now at the end of the first lap, the tires should pretty much be okay at this point, Randy. I think Christoph Herbino's just got a few nerves to him. He completely missed the curb and the apex there at the inner loop, and it's something uncanny to see from a top driver, especially one that set a 36 in qualifying.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's way wide at turn number 1. That's a common line as they run these days on the normal, or excuse me, I'll say the new version of Watkins Glen, but the way this version is sort of paved is a little bit of a rougher transition. You don't typically want to see these open wheel cars getting that wide at the track out point of turn 1. So I definitely think something's not right with Herbino's cars. Maybe he got a little bit wide and got a little bit of damage and is struggling with the aero on that car because of it. But regardless, it seems like something isn't right. And he's all over the place. Nowhere near the apex behind him. Defondre spun around through the bus stop.
Yeah, and around goes van der Slik around the outside at least. Have a look at Cedric Krolzak up the inside and makes up a position there. So Krolzak up in a P5. Look, Barbie also trying to reel in a couple of positions here as well, but Barbie will have to succumb to the pressure in the end. Look, Barbie 3rd in the championship heading into this round, of course, too. So he has implications for his overall efforts here. Through turn 9, he goes on the exit, not taking the draft, Randy. That's going to hurt his chances of possibly trying to reel the driver in front here.
Yeah, you're right, but it's at the same time maybe just not wanting to get too aggressive here as these drivers work now through the tight exit sort of stage of the bus stop. But spread out as things are at the head of the field because the incidents we've seen, look at how tight this fight is in the back of your pack. And about 7th, 8th, 9th in line. Huge string of cars all lined up that were just all bunched together working towards the exit of the boot. Now they come down on the front straightaway to begin lap number 4 of 20 here. And I think we're going to see some drafting shenaniganry into 1 and into the bus stop this time.
Yeah, from Bobby's point of view, he's a bit too far behind with the draft, but he runs wide there, and that's the line that Randy was talking about. Perfectly legal here. Won't get you into trouble by the stewards, and it may even be the quickest line for some drivers, and that's why you see him drift all the way out wide. But up ahead of him, Defondre, who had the spin, is trying to reel in the number 5 in front of him, and Defondre now around the outside here into the inner loop. Wow, that was a quick overtake by Guilherme, and it goes to show his desperation to climb his way back up the order.
Definitely. I mean, and he's doing a good job working at it already. That is a tough move to make around the outside. You have to be committed. You can make it stick, especially if you can force that driver on the right-hand side to keep it tight into the second apex. But man, you really have to wheel it going into the entry of the bus stop to be able to make that stick. Driver ahead of him as well. Cedric making a slight mistake as well, coming up the toe of the boot. And that's going to mean that Defondre brings in a little bit more time as a 10 car, bobs and weaves a little bit in towards 8.
Yeah, for sure. And this uphill now, this left-hander coming up, exiting the boot. It's such a tough left-hander, blind apex. Some of the drivers struggling throughout the week through that corner. But back to your lead, Ralph Benitez, after 5 minutes of racing action and a few laps into this event, he's leading this race by 3 seconds.
The 6 car's on pit road. Christopher Herbert is leading this race. What's happened to Ralph?
That is insane. What's going on? So Ralph Benitez, we'll have a look at the replay shortly, Randy, but
looking at it now.
So what's happened to him?
I'm still not sure. He went up into the toe of the boot just fine, and he's going down in towards the heel, and that car just, I don't know if he's had a hardware failure or what the deal is. We'll ride this back on board with the 6 car. You saw on your screen, he just basically stops on the front straightaway going in towards turn 8, and I think he may have had a hardware failure. Either that or he's had some unrelated sort of, let's say, emergency prop up in real life. We hope that's not the case. But of course, it's important to remember these drivers are racing from home, not out of the realm of possibilities that something like that happened. But I haven't seen anything that would, I mean, it doesn't actually really look like a hardware failure either. He just sort of stops, and I'm not sure. That's an odd one for me.
Certainly something we need to check out after the event, and we'll try and get a hold of Ralph Benitez anyway throughout this event. A driver who's been quick throughout the weeks here in the Formula 3, but that gifts the lead to Christophe Herbinot, who may remain untouched if he can sustain this pace. We know that Herbinot was struggling with some consistency early on in this event, and you know, this race is far from over here on lap 5 of 20, so Herbinot's got to string together a good few laps here as he begins lap 6 at the moment. And behind him, Kevin van der Slik is about 3 seconds behind, slightly reeling him in there, Randy, by 2/10. So maybe this race isn't over.
Yeah, maybe not, but it's still a big gap at 3 seconds, and at 2/10 a lap. It's going to take him basically right up until the end of the race to bring that gap down and in. So it's a fight we'll have to keep an eye on and watch, but you know, we got to wait a couple more laps into one car of Charlie Summers going to work on, I believe, the 4 of Loic Barba coming out of the S's, and the 1 car will have that position before they even make it to the braking zone of the bus stop. So maybe some different aero levels coming into play here, Johnny, because that 1 car definitely seems quick in a straight line.
Certainly does. Started from the last position, so probably, well, you have to set up the car for low downforce for sure to make your way up through the order, but you know, these, despite all the long straights here and high sweeping corners, there are varying downforce levels you can run at Watkins Glen, and we'll see a whole heap of them. Drivers will scream up to 240 kilometers an hour at their max here. Slightly higher with a draft, but Summers right behind the number 5 up ahead. And Summers, I think he's looking good for a podium, maybe even P2, because he's only 4 seconds off Kevin van der Slik.
Right, he definitely has good pace here, but he's still got a lot of work to do, and there's not really that much race left. I mean, there are only 20-lap races. Of course, we still have the majority of it ahead of us, but you know, the races don't really last that long. He's a little wide off the last corner, which means the opportunity won't come in towards turn 1. Maybe a little bit of dirty air affecting that number 1 car of Charlie Summers trying to chase down Derek Issa. Top 5, I think, for sure, for the driver of this one machine, but a podium, it'd be miraculous to see him do it, and if that's going to be what we see, I am more than excited to watch it happen.
Yeah, Issa's a hothead, so if anything goes wrong here, wouldn't be surprised if he even tried to take him out if Summers pulls off a bad move, but Summers gets the move off cleanly, so I don't think he'll be touched by Issa heading into this corner. And Summers, brilliant move there, and he's up into the top 5 now after starting from the back row.
Yeah, Charlie Summers, absolutely amazing drive at the moment. Probably going to be kicking himself just a little bit, not getting a qualifying time in, and having to start so deep on the order here. So, got to be wondering just a little bit what could have happened if he had actually started a bit further up the field. But he's still only 6 seconds off your leader, so that's not exactly horrendous, as he immediately starts reeling in Cedric Krolschik, who's not very far up the order either.
It's a good race so far from Charlie Summers. Unexpected villain right now, challenging for the podiums. I'm very surprised that the Flandre, not doubting his talent at all, but he's still in P3 after a spin. Right, Randy?
Well,
Imagine if he...
It's just been a drama-filled race, hasn't it?
Yeah, like if he Oh, he could have spun again here at the final corner. That was close. I was having a look at him. And he's lost a bit of time, but oh goodness. Pushing a bit too hard there. I'm not sure if he clipped the grass on entry, but definitely something that went wrong for the Flandre there. But had he not had that spin, and had he not had that moment at the final corner, now I'm clutching at straws here, but should have certainly been closer to Christophe Herbinot.
You're definitely right. He's going to not be happy with that, but at the same time, got to remember he only qualified 6th quick, so it's not like he was the paciest car out there, and he sort of stabilized around the car he's qualified around. I mean, Herbinot has since getting the lead, has opened up the gap from Kelvin Vanderslick, and Deflandre has basically stayed about even with that 14 car, gap sort of ebbing and flowing just a little bit, but knock it is Summers time to the 10 car of Cedric, because that blue and white number 1 is storming through this field and is already knocking on the top 4.
Yeah, ironically, Summers climbing his way up the order, and cloud cover over the Watkins Glen at the moment. So as the weather changes, Summers is heating up the order right now. I'm just searching for puns there, Randy. I failed. I don't think I did a good job of that. Here we go through the exit, the boot coming up right now. Obviously called the boot because it's shaped like a boot, Randy, and that is not surprising to many people.
No, I mean it's pretty obvious why we call that section of the racetrack just like that. Similar to why everyone calls the bus stop chicane at Spa the bus stop, because it no longer looks like a bus stop. But Charlie Summers, tell you, he looks fast. We might have to call him Mr. Lightning here, because he's already all over the back of this 10 car of Cedric, was really tied up against that the rear wing of Frederick Krolschick coming out through the final corner. And through turn 1, Charlie is a much better line. Look for the move down in towards the bus stop this time.
Yeah, he's going to catch him a bit too early, but cycles around the outside. You want to sort of make the pass right about now as the track starts to straighten, but Summers is so quick it doesn't matter. Up to 246 kilometers an hour here on the main straight, almost maxing out here in 6th gear, throwing the car into the inner loop, and makes up another position. He's up in a P4. Brilliant move from Summers. And, you know, Randy, I thought maybe he'd be impeded by catching him a bit too early, but Summers just had so much, so little downforce on the car that it just helps him, or propels himself into the top 4.
That really seems to be the situation here, doesn't it? And I've actually seen that a couple times already, and I'm a little bit surprised. Normally coming off of turn 1 in most cars with the slipstream, you'll tend to catch that next car, start catching them after you're already down and through the S's when the track's already straightened itself out. It seems like with these F3 cars, I've seen it several times already, you know, if you get a decent run through turn 1, you get enough overspeed that you can basically just work your way right up alongside at the top of the hill, and you're already making the move right at the crest of it before you're ever working your way out of the right-hander coming down the hill on the run towards the bus stop. So the drag on these cars definitely facilitating some fun moments and fun passing here, as now Charlie Summers has his first sort of decent gap to reel in, but he's not wasting much time of reeling in Guillaume Deflandre.
Yeah, Deflandre trying to pick up his rhythm after a couple of moments here in this race. Van der Slick has driven... do you want to make another pun here? He's driven Slick. So, he's driving splendidly this race.
These are some low-level puns.
I know, but we have
to get you a pun book.
I think last race, a few weeks ago when you and I were doing them, I was much better. But this race, I'm just clutching at straws again for these puns. So, Van der Slick, regardless, is doing well. Down the order... Jota Perez as well, who started from last alongside Charlie Summers, into the top 10 now. What is with this? It's a race of attrition all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, we have had a handful of cars out of the race. I mean, your drivers that are lapped down, Svan Duslaw, Neil Bledsoe, Ryan Thompson, David Dendelo, Bruno Berg, Henry Robert, and Suilo Almeida. So what is that, 6 cars find themselves laps down here, 7 cars, laps down, and basically in the garage. Race is already done, and we're going to be halfway at the end of this lap. So you're right, a little bit of attrition, but it's well done by the pair of drivers that started on the back row. One of them already pretty much fighting for a podium spot with Guame. The other one inside the top 10. That's up a net basically 13 positions. Maybe you don't need to start very well in these races. You just got to tag the back of the field and cruise your way up to the head of it.
And we must say as well, Ralph Benitez, who was in the lead of this race comfortably, back out on the racetrack. He's got that car going again, and we know in iRacing you are able to do that in the sim racing universe, depending on rules and the race itself and the competition. But at least in Formula 3 here for Friday Night Primetime, you can. And he's out in the way, and I don't think his race is going to improve any better than P16, but just an odd incident that we need to have a chat to him after the event about what happened.
Yeah, we'll see if he turns up. We'll definitely ask him about it because, yeah, it's really strange. He just sort of stops on a straightaway all by himself. I didn't see any contact with the car that I noticed on the replay. So, you know, maybe something popping up inside of the real life as the fight for second's going to be on. DeFlandre's gotten a big run on the 14 car, tries the outside of the bus stop. That's never going to stick, and he's going to lose a bit of time.
Summers off. And Summers off, Randy. Sorry to interrupt. Summers off right behind them, who was having a splendid race from the back end of the order. He's damaged that Formula 3. The Dallara chassis is done and dusted, I think, for this race. The rear wing is, bent all over the place. Got to be careful of traffic now, trying to make their way up the order. But as that was happening, Randy, Summers just got a bit too excited behind.
I think you're right. We're watching that on the replay right now, and he just clips the first curb going into the bus stop. And I want to get another angle with that just to sort of show you guys how that happened. And it just basically upsets the car and slings it right into the outside wall. And that's always the big risk you take here, isn't it, Johnny? When you go aggressive on the downforce, because that curb at the entrance of the bus stop chicane is pretty fierce. And normally you need this, the bulk of that is suspension setup, getting that car, the car to really work there. But if you take a bunch of aero out of the car, if you get a little bit of a slide on the entry into that first part of the bus stop and then you catch that curb wrong, it's going to throw you into the fence 100% of the time.
Exactly, and I set some times during the week, and I was close to the top times here. And I think through that curb, the trick is you just have to straighten the steering wheel as you travel over it so you can get away with it. But if you look at when we watch the replay, Summers definitely had some steering angle as he hit the curb, Randy. And even though it's a bit difficult to hit the curb with his steering wheel straight here, it's impossible to do it with steering angle. And that's why Summers was sent straight to the gravel and straight into the wall as well. His race is over. It was having such a brilliant race as well, was Charlie Summers. And that's just lesson learned, I guess, for next time, whenever the next race he has around here in whatever car, is that curb can be deadly there at either the inner loop or the bus stop, whatever you like to call it.
Yeah, the inner loop, the bus stop, it flip-flops back and forth. Doesn't seem like much of an inner loop, if I'm honest, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Going to be lesson learned to a certain extent, as now we just keep an eye basically on the same gaggle of cars, just now without the car of Charlie Summers in the midst of it. The 14 of Kevin Vanderslick still at the head of it. Yami Delflandre still a couple of tenths back. We're currently focused on the 10 car of Cedric Krolschik, who's sort of in the middle of this whole fight. They're strung out just a little bit, Johnny. They're far enough away that it's not intense amounts of pressure that's being put on at the moment, but you still have to keep an eye on your mirror and to keep an eye on your relative black box to what's happening behind you, because you don't have that much clean space at the moment.
100%. Sun starts to shine over Watkins Glen. And on lap 13 of 20, I look at that number, and there's still plenty of racing to go. This race is far from over. Herbino with a 5.5 second lead ahead of Kevin Vanderslick. Delflandre behind with a couple of moments in this race, one spin included, still finds himself in the podium positions. Other drivers still alive, it has to be said. Cedric Krolschik and Loic Barbie.
Yep. It's going to be the 4 car at the inside of the 10, so Loic Barba gets that job done. The dreadful moment, Johnny, where we both talked about an incident at this, or a pass at the same time and interrupt each other.
Yeah, that's right. So Barbie that's a brilliant move for P4, is it? It is, yes. So good move again, Randy, and I guess Loic Barbie is not third in the championship for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, he's having a very good run. I think there was a little bit of, I don't want to say team orders there, but I think Loic's has a little bit more pace as watching that 10 car of Cedric, little bit of a wiggle as he went up the toe of the boot. So I don't think he's entirely happy with that car. And them being teammates, I think he would have just sort of helped facilitate that pass just a little bit, which is, of course, more than all right in these sorts of races, especially with this much of the race left to go. Now the question is, can Loic Barba do something with that and work his way up to that number 8 car of Guillaume Delflandre for the podium position?
So as this race progresses, tires will wear a little bit more, but as fuel decreases, I think having low fuel around this circuit makes such a huge difference, Randy. Any reason? Is that because of the long radius corners?
I think so, and not to mention the corners are just so fast. I mean, you talk about getting a lightly fueled car. It's not going to matter as much, say, at the hairpin at the toe of the boot, or maybe through a couple of the other slower corners at that part of the racetrack. But all these fast corners, you think about turn 1, going through the bus stop, through the carousel, down the hill in towards the entry of the boot, up the right-hander as well. I think that's one of the more important corners. You just carry that extra 3 to 4 miles an hour through the center of the corner, and that it doesn't sound like much, but in terms of momentum and how that allows you to accelerate down the following straightaway, it's an absolutely enormous difference. Not to mention, of course, the fact the car is lighter and it'll accelerate better as well. So you'll accelerate better just because you're carrying more speed, on top of the fact that because you're lighter. So because of that, we just see the lap times slowly kind of get quicker and quicker, even with the tires burning off a little bit. I mean, most of these drivers were in the 38s, mid to high 38s at the start of this race. The 13 car, Luke Barba, he's just gotten quicker. He's gone from running mid to high 38s, through the first 6 or 7 laps. Lap 13, he put down a 37.2.
That's a quick time. 37.2. Considering they were mid 36s in qualifying, at least Benitez was. Herbino was also in the 36s.
It was
to
actually
do
the
that,
lap of the race.
Yeah, lovely. And considering, to do that there was a draft, though, it has to be said, but at the same time, to do that on worn tires, low fuel, that's pretty impressive here on as they begin lap 15, as Herbino crosses the line, heads into the first corner. We have next week as well, Randy, around Laguna Seca for the final round. Not a bad circuit for the final round of the championship.
It's going to be a fantastic one, I think. I'm really a big fan of Laguna Seca. I always have been. I know a lot of drivers in sim racing can easily get frustrated with it, just because it is a circuit that can be difficult to make moves at, because it's not your traditional track. You need to keep an eye on this 5-car, Derek Issa, making a move here on Cedric Trollshake. We just saw that 10-car lose a spot to his teammate, and he's going to lose one to Derek Issa as well. So move Issa up a spot in the 10-car, back down another one. But Laguna Seca, a difficult track to make passes at, because the front straightaway really isn't that long. So you have to be a little bit more physical with it and really have to be brave and really send the car into the corners. And a lot of drivers really do struggle with that and making moves around that place.
So what's tougher, the braking zone into the corkscrew or the exit?
The braking zone really isn't what's difficult. It's actually just trying to sort of keep the car settled, I think, as you work your way down sort of through the actual clips of the curbs. And I don't actually even really think the corkscrew is the most difficult corner on the racetrack, generally speaking. I think for these guys, it's going to be the corner just before that quick left-hander that has that big sort of red sausage curb on the left-hand side. These guys are going to be carrying a ton of speed through there, and if you're just a little bit too far to the left and clip that sausage curb, it's basically your race over.
Yeah, exactly. And luckily enough, Watkins Glen, no sausage curbs here, but just big, large curbs that can really affect the drivers, as some of the top three there of the Flandre, Barbie head through the first corner, now up the S's. The car can bottom out over the curbs. It can ride them a little bit poorly. So it's a tough track, this Watkins Glen, for an open wheeler, Randy, because of just the way open wheelers is designed. As we see a battle here heading into the inner loop. De Flandre around the outside into P2 is Guilherme De Flandre. Oh, and he's almost lost it. The same point of the circuit. He lost it earlier. He's out of the race. That car's going to be done and dusted, flipping over. So another car out in the background as well.
So we'll see what happens to the 8 car, and then we'll get the replay on the car behind as they work their way through. So let's see what happens first. Guilherme De Flandre, you see him working the draft on Kelvin Vandersleek, ducks to the outside of the bus stop. Let's see if there's contact between the two. Doesn't seem like it. That back end just steps out on him, and he's just unable to bring it back down. Now let's check in. I believe it was the 4 or maybe the 5 of Derek Issa.
Number 5.
Yeah, Derek Issa had a similar incident at the exit of the corner. Let's see what happened to him. So replay up now as he works down the back straightaway. A couple seconds until we see the incident. You're going to see the big wreck ahead of him here, ahead of Derek, as he's going to work down into the bus stop. Late braking, at about the 200-foot marker, and now through the bus stop. He did the exact same incident. They both clipped that sort of left-hand curve, that first left-hand curve, and the cars, both of them, they just lost the rear the exact same way. So now Derek Issa down the order. He's currently fighting with Sebastian Chevalier, who's in the 7th spot. So, or actually, take that back, in the 6th spot. That'll mean Derek Issa has maintained 6th with 4 laps to go. I think with his pace, Derek should be able to get this job done quickly, and he's already harassing the driver of that number 16 before they even work themselves up the hill. So, bit of aggression coming here from Derek as they work down the back straight.
Hey, he looked erratic in the few laps before he spun, so he was struggling a lot. And he's still struggling now, but I think it's an easy move on Chevalier, who's a bit slower than him. So Issa back up the order. By the way, news on Ralph Benitez. Pedals problems for him. And that is why he pulled off the racetrack once. And now, yet again, he joins our DNF list officially. So there are the technical issues, Randy, as to explain why he just pulled out from the lead.
And it's a nightmare situation, isn't it, to have hardware issues like that? I mean, I've had those sort of problems crop up before, and it can be so frustrating to deal with when you get on the grid and, you know, maybe it's like, oh no, my wheel's not plugged in, which means you then get it plugged in and suddenly you're on the starting grid trying to get it calibrated, or you have an issue as you work your way out onto the racetrack. I actually had a moment once during doing an endurance race. We were running triple stints. It was the first season, the first year we had the Le Mans 24 with the new GTE cars. And I was out there in a Ferrari. First hour of my stint, I had no force feedback. Come down on towards pit road, reboot the wheel, and I get back out there. And while I had force feedback and it was calibrated, it was at a different sort of force feedback level than I typically worked with. It sort of went to the default values. It's like Barba all over the grass exiting turn 1. So really being... let's say he thinks it's free real estate out there at the exit of turn 1, but it can be really difficult. Eventually got it sorted out for the 3rd stint, but it was probably one of the most tricky 3 stints I've ever run, where every single stint the car just felt different, but the car itself had never changed.
You've gone back to the early days of sim racing, where all those old school drivers, all the ones that are like 40 years old now, they all used to drive with no force feedback because we never had force feedback wheels back in the day.
Well, yeah, I remember when the G27 released, which is now, I mean, the Logitech wheel, that was, you know, that became, that used to be a hot commodity, and then it sort of became the standard entry-level wheel. I mean, that was, I mean, a lot of people sort of look at the G27, and now it's sort of extended to the G29. Granted, it was the G25 line at the time, of course, very similar base. Actually, one of the big changes was actually just in the shifter of that wheel. But, you know, that line with force feedback being so affordable was really, I think, the 2 pieces of a hardware that really propped the hobby up quite a bit, as we're about a few seconds away from us being 2 to go.
Yeah, exactly. Herbino's going to cross the line and begin the penultimate lap here around Watkins Glen, as what's been a thoroughly enjoyable race. Behind him, Kevin van der Slick in a battle with Loic Barbie for the final podium positions. I think if these two keep it on the tarmac, they will seal those 2 podium positions. But in what order will it be? Cedric Krolzak in the 4th position, untouched. He'll be fine from there. Up ahead, I was having a look at Kevin van der Slick, and he was so far off the racetrack, you might as well call him in Toronto, Canada. Now here's Loic Barbie making a move. Oh, trailing off the inside. Front wing damage for Barbie. It was a very late chop from Kevin van der Slick. Barbie thought he left the inside open, which was uncanny. I think van der Slick fell asleep there for a second. The two go alongside each other. Van der Slick is off the racetrack and into the wall, and Loic Barbie piles the pressure on Kevin van der Slick here. And what was potentially a podium for Kevin is now P4 as Krolzak makes his way past.
Yeah, you're right. We watch there as he start the replay as he exits turn 1. You know, the fact he's that wide leads me to believe maybe he wasn't exactly happy with the handling of that race car. And we're going to see that again. Watch for the move from behind. You're going to see just a little bit of aggression, I think, that he sort of responds to. Actually, you don't really get it. He moves to the middle of the racetrack. Going to be side by side in towards the bus stop, and then this sort of the same incident. You know, I mean, he just sort of loops that car around, going around the outside. So for Kevin van der Slick, excuse me, going to be able to limp that car around, I think, but he's going to do nothing but fall because of it. Christophe Herbino, by the way, has been able to take fastest lap of the race out there in clean air at a 37.174.
And he begins the final lap And it looks like he is, I don't want to call it, anything can happen in this race, but it looks like he's got one hand on the trophy so far.
Said second and third just have to keep it on the track, and they had podium positions, and look what that did.
Exactly. So I'm just going to keep it together here. Van der Slik now demoted to 5th, and he loses another position. Kevin Van der Slik. I'm not sure if it was the damage or just the pressure from Loic Barbie that just forced a spin.
Yeah, I think you're right. As we're going to take a peek at this 8th place battle, it's still a little bit close. You have Jota Perez and Borja Morero. We haven't talked about them the entirety of this 20-lap race. They're nose to tail working down in towards the bus stop right now. They're also side by side up ahead of them, but we're going to focus on this fight. That's the 14 car, actually, of Kevin Van der Slik that you see falling down the order. That's that side by side fight. But the 20 off of the bus stop here, trying to make the late race move. Jota Perez off the racetrack, keeps it out of the wall, so we should be able to limp it home. But now we need to shift focus as Christophe Herbino, only a couple corners left, and he's won here on Friday Night Prime Time, Week 11.
What a cracking race. And it continues nevertheless here as Herbino has just a few more corners to go to win Friday Night Primetime action here on RaceBot TV, streaming live on the iRacing Esports Network. The championship leader does it again. There's a reason why he's leading the point standings. There's a reason why he's won this race. The race of attrition comes to an end, and Christophe Herbino wins Week 11 for Season 2 2019 here for the iRacing Formula 3 Championship. Behind him, Loic Barbie is confirmed in the 2nd position. Cedric Kolzak, who would have guessed, after starting from 8th, he ends up on the podium. Don't forget, of course, as well, that Loic Barbie started outside the top 10, so it's a brilliant podium position for him, of course, as well. Kevin Van der Slik, at the end of the day, will end up in 7th as he's lost, what is that, 5 positions in just a couple of laps. So Van der Slik there, not the best of final laps, of course, as Jota Perez crosses the line in 9th after that late spin. But Randy, all eyes on Christophe Herbino. What a drive from him. What a thrilling event, of course, as well. And the Frenchman, Loic Barbie, from 11th to 2nd. Not sure who driver of the day is here today.
Yeah, I think you're right. It may have to go to Herbino, who after his mistake and once he got sort of the freebie of the race lead, he just basically checked out and went completely unchallenged. He's going to, I think, come to a stop maybe down here at the bus stop. I don't know. It's an odd celebratory lap for him as he's going to work his way around the racetrack, constantly picking the pace up and then losing it. But what a run from him, as he is going to be a very, very happy camper for sure.
So, as all drivers have finished, let's take a look at your final race results. So, Christophe Herbino, as we know, in just over half an hour in this 20-lap event, takes the win for Week 11, Season 2, 2019 of the iRacing Formula 3 Championship. Loic Barbie joins him on the podium, of course, too. Barbie picked off a few drivers there throughout the event after starting from outside the top 10. Brilliant event from Cedric Kolzak in the 3rd position. Sebastian Chevalier ended up in 5th at the end of the day. Morero ended up in 6th down the order, of course, too. Morero had a brilliant event, too, starting outside the top. Well, he started in 14th, so definitely way outside the top 10, of course, as well. Kevin Van der Slik had P2 all to himself most of the event. But at the end of the day, with that late spin under pressure from Barbie, ended up in 7th. Peter Zonka in the 8th position. Jota Perez, after starting from last, had he not had that spin, could have ended up 6th, but will still claim a brilliant 9th position. Rodriguez rounds out the top 10, of course, as well. A couple of other notable names in this race. Ralph Benitez with pedal issues ended up 2 laps down despite pulling off the racetrack twice in this event. So it goes to show how quick, insanely quick he was after starting from pole. Maybe we'll see Benitez claiming a win in the final round next time out. Maybe he can sustain this pace heading to Laguna Seca. The Flandre with a couple of spins too. He should have certainly been up there battling for the lead, at least with Herbino. But he needs to work on that consistency in the next week because he has some thrilling pace, doesn't he? Charlie Summers started near the back row, had some good pace as well, the number 1 driver, but ended up into the wall, of course, as well through the inner loop. And we know an opening lap crash between Dendelo, Berg, Almeida, which was caused by Henry Robert, took all those drivers out. What an event it was, Randy, here for Formula 3. A championship, I reckon, is very underrated. You know, people think there's low participation and all these other rumors. I think there's plenty of talent out here. I think the car's quite fun to drive. Easy to pick up as well on the spot. Default set is good. And it just goes to show that, you know, the more communities we see like this, the more racing action we can get on Friday night primetime.
Oh, yeah, you're definitely right. It is one of those more, with it being a feeder series formula car, it doesn't quite have the popularity of some of the other series, especially because GTE and GT3 is so hot on the sim right now. But, and it's, of course, fighting, with the likes of the Formula Renault 2.0 and the 3.5 and the Pro Mazda. But still, these Formula 3 cars, they put on an amazing show. And I'm interested to see if we get any of these drivers in for some post-race interviews and see what they thought. And, well, they thought their cars handled here today at Watkins Glen.
So let's take a quick ad break. We'll be back shortly here. Don't leave us, and we will conclude our broadcast for Friday night primetime.
Because here comes Holgate. He has the outside line through the final corner for the final time. Once again, photo finish here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Will it be Tim Holgate? It's going to be Christopher DeMerit at the line.
So that is our action wrapped up for Friday night primetime here, streaming live on the iRacing Esports Network. The next race will be on the 31st of May 2019. That will be the 12th week of Season 2 2019 around Laguna Seca for the iRacing Formula 3 Championship for Friday night primetime. Don't miss it, of course, as well. Broadcast will be brought to you by RacePot TV, again, streamed live on the iRacing Esports Network. Thanks to all you viewers joining us today's broadcast and weekly again for this season. You've been thrilling throughout the campaign. I am Jonathan Simon, alongside Randolph Cheneth on expert comms and production here today. Thanks to our RaceBot TV production crew as well, as you can see on screen. Plenty of team members here behind the scenes getting the broadcast done, because this today was a RaceBot TV presentation broadcasted on the iRacing Esports Network. We say so long from Watkins Glen. We'll see you at Laguna Seca in just a week's time.